Non-Jews in the U.S. make up 97% of the population. We don't need a band-aid or a cure to solve the problem of the Jewish plutocracy. There is no one to stand in our way. There is no country to stop us. Here is the blueprint for America's final solution. Currently, those of us non-Jews living in the U.S. are living in a caste system. Jews, by their vast overrepresentation, make up the largest plurality of any overrepresented ethnic group in our federal elected officials, federal appointed executive and judicial officers, and officers in the Federal Reserve Bank that controls our economy. They also make up a large plurality of stockholders in banks and securities firms. So influential are they can't be jailed, and they are not allowed to fail. We have to bail them out. The Jews, who make up less than 3% of the U.S. population, and people married to them, that they control the U.S. is not subject to debate. You are just plain stupid if you can't acknowledge that fact, and you're even stupider if you don't care. Those that don't learn from history are doomed to suffer the consequences of repeating it. Before Hitler's rise to power, it is doubtful the Jews ever came as close to co-opting power in Germany the way they have in the U.S. Think about this. Jews who make up less than 2% of Germany's population prior to Hitler accounted for about 16% of the lawyers. Try as you might in the U.S., you're not going to find a large or mid-sized firm in any urban or large suburban law firm that doesn't have a Jewish partner and a large number of Jewish associates. They control your petition for redress of grievances. They control your access to the courts. We are not going to march people to the showers. We're not going to put them in the ovens. We're not going to take away people's citizenship unless they've engaged in some activity that evidences an intent to relinquish their citizenship. In other words, to place the interests of another country or another group of people above that of the United States interests and above the interest of the citizens of the United States. There have been laws in place to deal with racial discrimination in this country, and that is the starting point. The 14th Amendment protects us non-Jews. It protects us non-Jews from our lives and our economy and our government being controlled by an ethnic and religious group which takes our country's wealth, resources, and people's labor and intelligence, and it uses it to enrich themselves and uses it to financially support the horrors of Jewish Apartheid that is dispossessing and destroying the Palestinian people in the Middle East and causing 1/3 and 1/2 of the world to aspire to destroy the U.S. political, economic, and military machinery that is used to oppress the Muslims in the world. The 14th Amendment states, all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges and immunities of the citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, or deny any person within its jurisdiction equal protection of the laws. The U.S. Supreme Court readings of the 14th Amendment, which Jews have used successfully over and over again, guarantee that a citizens cannot be discriminated against on the basis of their ethnic or religious group. To ensure that the undue influence will not continue to corrupt or re-corrupt the body of U.S. federal and state government employees and members and employees of the Federal Reserve Bank, which are supposed to serve and represent the people, not just a certain people. All government and Federal Reserve appointees and employees and applicants, including judges, must divulge membership of their religious affiliation and ethnic heritage and racial heritage. Also, said employees and applicants must divulge their religious affiliation and ethnic background of their spouses, siblings, and parents. Government jobs include teaching and faculty positions at public schools and high schools. Government positions also include attorneys who are members of law firms over 5 people, since being an attorney is a state judicial position, and attorneys are mere extensions of the judiciary, a branch of the government. Federal and state governments already document government employee and applicant race because our government accepts as fact the past and present role of racism in hiring and retention of government employees, and because it is the duty of our government to have a workforce that is reflective of the people of the nation it represents. This is not an Indian caste system from the prior century. Extending the collection of data to include ethnic and religious background of a Jew or a Christian or Muslim or other is merely an extension of the current collection of racial data used to ensure that our government abides by the 14th Amendment and to ensure that we are a government by and for the people, not just a government for certain people. Nowhere in the U.S. Constitution is it declared that a particular religious ethnic group, a group that makes up less than 3% of the U.S. population, will be reserved 30% of the positions on the U.S. Supreme Court, or will be overrepresented in our federal judgeships by 7 to 10 times their percentage of the population. Nowhere in the U.S. Constitution does it declare that the progeny of a particular religious group will be permitted to operate in institutions such as the Federal Reserve Bank, which serves to enrich members of their particular religious ethnic group in far excess of their proportion of the U.S. population. Nor in the U.S. Constitution is there a provision that a particular religious ethnic minority of less than 3% will have a right to enact laws which will guarantee lucrative financial rewards to corporate associations operated by this particular ethnic group, where these too-big-to-fail associations do not contribute to the gross domestic product and well-being of the country, but where the sole function of these money changers is to take money from many people and shift the money and benefits to their own ethnic group. It is clear that the Jewish elements for years have used their influence and government positions to further interest of their own religious ethnic group, both here and in Israel, to protect the majority of U.S. citizens from further religious discrimination, and to identify the extent to which this religious discrimination has been permitted to undermine our government, and to determine an adequate remedy for this discrimination and misuse of our government and resources. It is incumbent upon federal and state governments to initiate regulations and laws immediately to document how overrepresented Jews are in our governments. Once we document the extent of their pervasive and inexplicable influence, steps must be taken to reduce their numbers in our government. A moratorium on new hiring and appointments of Jews will be necessary after we document their numbers over 6% in our federal government and economic institutions like the Federal Reserve Bank, and after we document at the state and city level that they occupy government positions by twice their state and local percentage. Next, we will institute proceedings to determine exactly how this ethnic and religious group obtain their positions, and in order to keep their jobs, Jews will be required to objectively justify that they came to their employment or appointment and retained their employment by non-discriminatory means. For example, if in New York, where Jews make up less than 9% of the population, a school district teaching force is 20% Jewish, and the only requirement for a teaching position is to have proper certification, none of the Jews over 9% can justify they got their positions or kept their positions through non-discriminatory means. So therefore, over half the Jews in that teaching force will be terminated from their positions. Mexico enacted a law a few decades ago aimed at inexplicable enrichment. The U.S. must enact laws aimed at impermissible, inexplicable government employment. The fact of disparate civil service impact on the population of our country, where non-Jews have been denied employment and positions of policy making because of Jewish favoritism, is proof of discrimination and violation of the 14th Amendment. For every job in our government that has been given to a Jew over their percentage, there is an American non-Jew that has been injured.